Bat Force Radio.
Bat Force Radio is rated M for mature, or should that be immature?
Grumps and Gramps, tons of laughs of Grumps and Gramps. Grumps and Gramps, tons of laughs of Grumps and Gramps. Grumps and Gramps, tons of laughs of Grumps and Gramps.
All right, welcome back to Bat Force Radio, Grumps and Gramps. I am Gramps from Dallas, Texas.
Hi, I'm Grumps from New York City.
All right, and this is episode 30 of the Grumps and Gramps show. And joining us tonight is a very special guest. His name is Efren Hernandez. On Instagram, his handles are Ink Drop Customs. And he also has a very successful YouTube page, also called Ink Drop Customs, where he gives tutorials on how to customize action figures. This is something that is becoming more and more a very popular trend with collectors and toy photographers, where they'll take a stock figure that they buy and they want to transform it either into something new or more expressive than what comes in the box. As collectors, we all hate the plastic stiff capes. I mean, they look good if you just want to get a very stoic pose, but what Efren does is he actually makes custom capes that really make these characters come to life. Is that basically correct?
Yeah, I think that sums up the majority of it. Yeah.
Okay. How long have you tell us a little bit about your origin story. When did you start collecting figures, and how did you get into this customization craft that you do?
I've collected figures for many years, even before COVID. But when COVID hit, I actually had more time, like everybody else did,
right.
And I actually was implementing more of that knowledge and time into the figures that I already had. And of course, like everybody else, the first ones that I did, I totally ruined. So I couldn't even show those. So those are gone. I either gave them away or they just made it somewhere into the trash. But those were years ago. And what I knew then is obviously not what I know now. Over the years, I was able to acquire a few different skills, even by watching some of the YouTube videos that other people have and implementing those skills into mine to make what I now have. And I'm still learning because there's some incredibly talented people out there that show you a clip and you're like, how'd you do that? You watch it over 20, 30 times until you finally get what they did, and then you try it and you do it wrong. And then after your 30 times, you get it right the first time and you try to remember how you did it. And that's why I started recording what I did, because I didn't remember my own process because I had already done so many other figures. Mm-hmm. And over time, I changed the technique. So by recording it, I could view my own work and reproduce if I was ever asked to create another figure of the same.
Wow. And that's how your YouTube channel was born then?
That's how it started. And mainly because I couldn't find what I wanted to see in how certain things were done. And I then decided to share what little knowledge I had on specific techniques and sharing those. And there was a lot of techniques out there, but they weren't implemented into the action figure community. So a lot of that translation was lost, even though the tools were the same, such right. as, painting statues or actually oil painting. A lot of those techniques are really implemented in action figure creation. And so I decided to share what little I knew of it with other people.
Okay. Well, I love your channel. One, because you break down your process so that it's easily understood, and you also, you know, you show everything. You don't try to hide your techniques, and you show us what tools you use. And I've learned a lot. I've been trying to get the courage to start making my own capes, but at the same time, I mean, I've purchased two from you, like we talked about. I've got the Batman Dark Knight for McFarlane figures, and I mean, this cape is amazing. And then I also have the Carrie Kelly cape,
Yeah, I got it right here.
which I've been a little hesitant to put it on her because it's going to take a little extra work on the collar, and I'm just haven't gotten the confidence yet to try it. But when I see your photos with it, I'm like, this is it. This is the guy that I need to go to for some of these capes. They're just amazing.
So,
I wrote a lot of capes.
what kind of material is the cape made out of?
Well, it depends on the figure and what pose you want it to have, because obviously different materials are going to be heavier. So I started with the wrong material, to be honest with you, and I had a lot of failures as to how to cut the correct angle, and then the biggest one was how to hide that wire. So I ended up having to recruit to cotton, which is really easy to pleat, and it stitches very easy. However, it frays also really easy.
Mm-hmm.
So then I went into rayons, which are very thin, very light, but again, they are also very susceptible to fraying, but they have some beautiful patterns. So then I went into the cosplay section when I went to Joann's, and they had this gigantic section of pleather. I go, oh, this is really cool. Well, there's only certain pleathers that iron really well. And then there's the other pleathers that they just don't iron at all. It doesn't matter what crease you want to put in it, it just won't take it. But they don't fray. So recently, I've been combining two different pleathers, one as a liner and one as exterior. And actually, the liner one is even thinner, but some of them will stick to the iron. So you got to have another material on top so it doesn't stick to it. So it's just been an ongoing and learning process. And I've switched it over many times. Even the pattern, some people ask me if I can give them a pattern, and I really can't, because each figure has a different cut.
Right.
And each figure installs different. So I couldn't tell you, hey, do it this way, because it's not going to work for the other 5 figures you have.
And you're talking about, like, you know, especially, I mean, I guess for Batman, I mean, with all the different figures, how it would attach to, I guess, underneath right here at the collarbone section, you know.
Yeah. Well, I started like many others, putting 2 holes on the shoulder and then punching it in there, and some of them even gluing down. But the problem was that the wire would fall. Okay. So I ended up finding out that it's best to anchor the wire. So I always leave a corner or little piece of the wire exposed, and I now drill it into the actual neck, and I embed that in there. And then I pull the material up to hide the wire. And now that gives it that anchorage or support for the wire to stay in place, and it doesn't twist on you. Because before, when I glued it down and I posed my cape, it would twist. Right. Or fall because it's too heavy of a material. So then I had to figure out, well, what gauge wire is the correct one? And like many other people, I would pose questions, what do you use? Well, what are you doing to do this? And I would get cut off. I wouldn't get an answer. Yeah. So I decided, okay, I'm going to figure it out, and I'm going to share it with somebody who is probably looking for the same answer.
Very cool.
Yeah, and that's nice.
For I have, if I can show an example, this was on a Batman Future State figure.
Yes, I just finished that one last week.
Yeah, so you can see, like, the original figure has a very thick plastic cape, and it just kind of hangs straight down. But with your cape and the techniques that you use, you can actually put it underneath where that cowl hangs below, and then it's more anchored, and then you can just pose it however.
Yes, that one has 4 wires, and those are anchored into the back.
Wow. 4. I see the seams like that. That's
Yeah, the 2 main wires are obviously on the edges, and the 2 center wires are just in the center underneath where that triangle comes out. You see the seams right there,
yeah.
and those are anchored into just underneath the other 2 wires.
That's got to be difficult to do.
It's pain. It's challenging at times, but the very end result is like it was worth my 30 minutes to install it and then actually get the photo that I was envisioning. And so when my client sees this is actually a commission piece, he was very ecstatic to see his figure look like this instead of what it was out of the box.
Do you use a sewing machine to sew on that?
Yes, I do. And this is another, I would say, another technique that I had to look into deeply because I didn't want seams showing on the edge where the wire is, especially with large stitching. And I see a lot of capes that way, and it looks like a parachute. So I don't want the cape to look that way. I don't want the stitching to draw the attention away from the figure. So I had to play around with the settings on the sewing machine where I got the smallest stitching that I could get that was difficult to notice, but it was obviously doing its job. And in the end, I ended up using the iron-on tape for making hems. And I use that on the edge of the cape, and then I embed the wire in that. And that way there's no stitching. But on the inside where the wire's going to the back, that I now stitch with a liner. And it works so much better because I can actually create a pocket for the wire without having a rib on the outside now. And because there's only certain figures that have that look, and can't all look the same. So unfortunately, you have to tailor your cape to what the figure's outfit is. And like the recent figure, the Batman that they have out now for the page punchers.
Yes.
That one doesn't have the ribs on the back. That one has stitching. So my concern was, well, how am I going to get that stitching and still get the wire? And I tried making a pocket, and I totally ruined the cape. So I had to start over, and I figured out, well, a liner. I need a liner that I can sew on top of, and at the same time create a pocket for that wire that hides it. So that's what I ended up having to do. And it worked out really well because that double material makes that those little tiny pleats at the very end, just like it's on the plastic. Because that was my other dilemma. How do I recreate those pleats that are in the plastic in the cloth? And so I just went, over and over in my head, how am I going to do that until I actually figured it out. And I was very happy with the end result. And I've already tweaked it a few times, but that's actually a combination of both the iron-on glue tape and the actual sewing machine. And actually, sewing machine is just because my mom's had one forever, and in the family, either you're a tailor or you're a seamstress. So I was able to pick it up very easy.
Oh, okay. So it's in your blood.
It runs in the family, yeah. So the machine was sitting there for a few years, and then COVID hits. All right, let's pull this out and make it work.
So you taught yourself how to sew as well?
Yes. Well, I knew the basics of it, but I had to watch a few channels as far as cape making. And I'll be honest with you, some were way out there. They were just too simple, and the cape looked really bad, or they were too complicated, and it still didn't look good. It didn't look to what the people needed. So I figured I got to figure something out that's different, that works for me, that I like, that I want to share. And over time, you've probably seen the videos. Each one of those cape videos has changed.
Yes.
It's never been the same because each figure is different. And as I change that, then I also change the technique. And it's just, every time it's different. There's no way to have the same pattern for every figure.
Well, one figure that I also noticed that you started creating a cape for was the Black Adam.
Yeah, that's one that was a real, what do you call it, a challenge, because it's a robe that crosses over, and actually I'm redoing that for my next figure because I did it wrong. So it looks good here because there's 4 pieces, but it's supposed to be 1 piece.
Oh man,
It's
4
supposed
pieces.
there's 4 pieces there. Yeah, there's the hood, which is 1, and
Okay.
then the main part in the back, which is all flared out, and then the 2 that cross over the shoulders. That's the other 2 pieces. But if you look at the video, you'll see them how I cut them out. Now,
Right.
each one of those gold dots, those are all hand drawn, and this is where I asked for some help from another artist, and he blew me off because he actually got the design that's in the movie, and I asked him, "Well, how did you get the pattern for the edge?" And he wouldn't answer me, so I figured it out. And it's with the Cricut machine. You just have to create the stamp and then put it on there. So I'm actually buying a Cricut machine just to get the pattern right.
What's a Cricut machine?
It's one of those vinyl cutters. It's a little, well, it depends on what you buy, but it looks like an actual printer, but it actually
Oh.
cuts vinyl designs.
Oh,
And then you can either get iron-on, or you can get the ones that have like a adhesive back,
mhm.
and you can, as long as you can design it, it'll cut it. And so that's what I'm going to be using on the next 2 capes that I have, like the Green Lantern cape. It has an actual pattern in the back, and either silver or white, but I'm not going to do it by hand. The machine cuts it much faster than I do, so I'll let the machine cut it. I'll stamp it down, and then I'll cut my pattern out and do my sewing.
Oh, is that how some of these guys, make like full body mezco type of cloth suit, and then they'll have like a vinyl emblem or something like that? Is that what they're
Yes.
using?
Yeah, but they
Okay.
won't tell you. They just show you the but if you ask them, they'll say, "Oh, I don't have time to explain it."
Yeah.
Really, but you had time to show me 40 different pictures.
Pretty much, yes.
Yeah.
Any
I've
other
heard that before.
So besides Batman and the Black Adam, what other type of projects have you been working on mostly?
I've been working on lighting certain figures or vehicles. And right now I'm trying to finish up my 66 Batman vehicle, but I always get interrupted and distracted. And all I've got to do is put it back together and throw a few lights in there. But that has also been a learning experience for the same reason that I didn't know how to do it. I was using actually Lego lights because they just plug and play.
Right.
But then you get to the point like, well, okay, where do I go from here? Because it's kind of like my limit. So I came across a page that was showing how to light Hot Wheels. Like, where did you get those teeny tiny lights and that battery?
Hot Wheel.
And so I went into his page, and this guy has an incredible work for lighting Hot Wheels and their touch sensor, which is amazing. So I asked him, because I wanted to place an order, and he answered, he goes, "I don't have time. I am so busy with orders."
Yeah.
So he obviously doing something really good, but he had a link to a page called evandesigns.com, and all they sell is electronics for miniatures. So I went to the page, and they just had it all categorized. I go, "Ooh, I really like this." So I started picking out their little samples, little kits, just to figure out how it works. So I bought like $50 worth of lighting kits. I still didn't know how to use them. And then I started playing around with them on some of my figures. And then I watched somebody else's videos, and I figured out, well, I can implement it for vehicles. And in this case, I implemented one of those on the Black Adam. I lit up the chest emblem.
Oh.
And so at first I started by having a USB cable because I didn't want to get back in there and replace batteries. But I had a lot of requests from people saying, well, can we see one with batteries? So that put me on another dilemma, and now I'm going to resolve that. How do I put a battery inside these tiny little figures? So I went back to that same page, and they have it. They have a
Really?
little tiny tiny little cell carrier with a switch on it. With everything's done for you. All you can do is pop it in there. And I bought a small set of those. Saying, okay, time to figure out how to do this. And you just kind of have to ruin one figure and do it right on the next one.
Is this what you did for your Batgirl motorcycle?
Yeah, and that's actually a model kit for Dragon Ball Z. But I painted it purple because I wanted a cycle for Batgirl. And then the lights are actually Lego lights. And
Oh,
because
okay.
they are so tiny and they're already pre-wired, all you do is plug and play. And that's actually off of a USB cable. So you can plug it into the back of your computer and let it run all day long. And then from there, I started getting into, looking information up on how to put in a small battery. But unfortunately, batteries only last you, maybe 15 hours. It's not a whole lot. And
Right.
that's why I went USB, because I could leave this on all day long. I mean, I have one in the corner here with my my Rocketeer. And as long as I turn on the computer, that thing's lit, 24 hours.
What did you use for?
Oh, no, that is also with the Lego lights, but that's a whole different combination of them to make that work. And that has sound and it has a remote. And I got into that because I saw their page and I go, oh, that's cool. That castle has music to it. How do I get it into this truck? And I bought the kit. It's a $60 kit because it comes with everything you need. But what's great is you can record whatever sound you want on that chip. And then you pop it in there. And that thing's pretty loud for what it is. It's a little tiny 2-watt speaker, but it fills up a room pretty loud. It's not a Bose system, but it does make noise. So this is the actual the Cowabunga truck or van from TMNT, and then I just repainted it as the Channel 6 news van. And then the decals are cut with a Cricut cutter. So they're a vinyl. They're not going to fade. They're not going to rub off, and they're certainly not going to peel off because once they're on, they're on. And those lights are actually, I purchased those out of China, just the little lenses, and I cut them down to fit. And those are actual Lego lights behind that, and the same thing with the orange and the interior. And then I made the doors open. So I used the existing hinges. I saw a few other videos where they pop in Lego hinges, and I just couldn't do it because it was too distracting from the rest of the work.
Right.
And so I said, no, it's got to be done with the existing hinges. So I sat there and I scribed out each door. And it took me an hour and a half per each door till I cut it out. And then I sanded it down. And then I put in the little hole for a safety pin. I cut a safety pin, and that was my hinge. And I did that for the front 2 doors and the 2 back doors. Yeah, it took me a long time.
You're not OCD or anything, right?
No, but I wanted it to look the way I envisioned it.
Yeah.
And then the interior, I saw somebody making it out of balsa wood, and it was great. It looked nice. And then I came across styrene. And go, oh, that looks really good. And it paints and it sands easy. I don't have a 3D printer, so I have to hand make things. So, in school, when I was in school, we didn't have any of this computer stuff. You wanted to see it done, you drew it out, and you cut the pieces to what you wanted it to look like.
Right.
That's what I did with the styrene. And the styrene is plastic, so it matches the end result being plastic. And then, of course, glue, it's just an easy way to go. There's no science to it. You glue it together, sand it, paint it, and there it is. But I added lights to the interior, and those were done with the Lego lights as well. Yeah, so it took me 30 days to do that one.
Oh my God. You're an animal.
While we're here, I have your video on of this page punch of Batman I've been watching.
The one with the red?
Yeah, the red one. And
that's a commission.
The cape is beautiful and the figure looks great. But the when you made the gun, That was super interesting and so creative. You combine the two, I guess, weapons or whatever into one grapnel gun.
I made the gun because I had seen a similar version in one of the other Batman series, and I
Okay.
thought, I want that grapnel. Where can I buy that grapnel? And actually, it was, I think they had a Build-A-Figure series where you could build the grapnel gun.
Mhm.
Yes.
And I thought, where can I get that piece? I can't find it anywhere. I'll just have to make it. So I ended up with that little revolver that I actually had purchased to make a Lone Ranger, which I never
Oh,
did.
okay.
I got distracted. And then McFarlane produces these ugly looking, grapnels that are oversized and don't fit in the hand. So then I remembered that one grapnel that I saw, and I looked at the two pieces. Oh, there it is. Slap it together with some super glue, and that's it. And actually, that's the second one that I made. The first one I didn't record. I just made it and I sent it out with the figure, and that was also for a page punchers. But that page puncher in the red in black cape, that was the customer request. I had to figure out, how am I going to get the red inside? You can't paint it because it's going to look tacky, or it's going to flake and it's going to deteriorate. And then I remembered I had some material that I purchased when I went on vacation. Well, let's see how this works out. And I was really happy the way it turned out. But it was complicated to cut because the two materials are totally different.
Hmm.
One is really thick,
Okay.
one is really thin. And when you sew them together, one of them tries to get away from you. So
Yeah.
you gotta be there and kind of baby it through the needle through the stitching process. And then I was off and I had to fix it. Yeah, it was complicated. It took me a long time, but I was happy with the end result. Where I showed the clip to the customer, and he was ecstatic. He was very happy that the red was where it was supposed to be, and it was wired and the whole bit. I didn't tell him the process. I just showed him the picture.
Yeah. I really liked your
Oh, wow.
That was my
Your
first
cycle.
writing project.
You're
And that
making
was-
me now want to do this.
This is my first one, and actually, this is done incorrectly because I didn't hide the wires in this one. Those were on the outside. When I actually have redone it 3 times already. I now have the wires inside, and at the time, I also added sound and a remote to this.
Oh.
And I wanted the remote for the same reason that I didn't want to walk up to it and turn it on. So this one has a USB cable on it, so it runs all the time. And then the remote actually makes the where the engine is, that will actually change colors. And then the other part of the remote obviously dims and brightens the lights. And then has the sound feature, which is a motorcycle engine sound, and that's about it.
Yeah, that is sick. I custom painted a version of that bike. I made all the bones black,
Mm-hmm.
and then I basically made it look like a 1966 version of that, that cycle.
Yeah.
All the like cracks and stuff like that, I painted all red, so they kind of look like blood coming through. The eyeballs red. Now I want to. After seeing this, I'm like, I need some red lights.
And on that one, I corrected the headlights. At first, I had the LEDs on the exterior,
Uh-huh.
and as I picked up a few more scale sets, I was able to drill them into the eye set and fill them with resin. So now they're hidden, but they light up when you switch them on.
God, I want to see that. That sounds so cool.
And so a lot of these first projects I have, I keep around as like my my model set. I go back to it and I redo it to see if it works before I share it with anybody. So a lot of them have scars. so I end up having to redo them instead of bringing out a whole new piece and then working on a whole new piece.
Now, you've also sent me some photos where you do toy photography as well, like this Wonder Woman.
Well, I started with the toy photography because that was kind of like the thing that was coming out.
Right.
But at the same time, I didn't find the videos that I wanted to be able to create some of those scenes. And now there's just a whole bunch of them. And then I got into the actual customizing and videoing. But this is an actual McFarlane figure that I actually put Barbie hair into because I didn't like the plastic hair.
Whoa.
It just couldn't turn. She couldn't do anything. So I replaced it with a Barbie hair. Obviously, I got the Barbie at the Goodwill and chopped off the hair, and then I made the pose. And then a lot of the weapons are from other figures. Now I shot this on a green screen, and that's how I was able to put in that background.
Very cool.
And then I just lit it according to the scene that I wanted.
Right.
And and it's just using this one. I did use flash, but now I just use the continuous lighting because you can see your shadows changing, your brightness, etc. And then I added some colors to some of those lights to give it the colors on the left side, the bluish green. And then of course I matched my background to the lighting that I did, and that's how that went. But that was a tiny little clip of video that I shot on that, and people reacted more to the video than they did the photo.
Now, you have a photography background, is that correct?
Yes. So most of what I do is events. I had an event last weekend. Did some product photography, and that's kind of how some of that comes into play. But most of it's event and portrait photography.
Okay. And then obviously you just use that skill set for your toy photography, which
So when I started shooting the video, the how-tos, I got a lot of requests. Well, we want to see the end product. Oh, okay. that's another project. So then I set up the way I like to see it. It's like, well, can we see it before and after? Okay. Shoot the before. Because a lot of times I didn't. I just went right into it, and okay, here's the finished piece. What did it look like before? Okay, let me start over. And so that's when I started buying two figures sometimes, because I wanted one for show and one that was completed, and I would sell the completed one. I would end up with the unfinished one that I'd just store away for future use or etc. So a lot of the stuff I have now are actually commission pieces. So those are pieces that aren't mine. So I'll do the whole process there, because once they leave, I can't get it back.
Right. Now you work a lot with like the McFarlane pieces. Is that the line that you like the most, or do you buy other lines?
I like it the most for the same reason that it's actually affordable. They're easy to find, and the plastic takes paint really well.
It does.
And that's the main reason. They're incredibly easy to work, and the parts are many times swappable. I have the Marvel Legends stuff, but you got to break arm and a leg on either piece to make it fit sometimes. And you got to destroy a torso to get into it.
Right.
And on the McFarlane's, you just pop them open. They just come apart, which are really good. This is actually one of the first pieces that I started with. And then that was one of the custom head sculpts that I bought out of China. I didn't know there were people here in the U.S. that did it. So I bought it out of China for $10. I painted it up, and I liked it. Okay, let's do a photo of it. And so I shared it, and people reacted well to it. And that's when I started sharing more of those. But they wanted to see how I got to there. So I had to find one that was not painted and then show them how to paint it.
I like to paint them too. I'm currently working on that Page Puncher's Batman. Let me take this.
Yeah.
Because the sculpt is really good.
It's pretty intense, yeah.
But what I've basically done is just kind of giving him a gray wash and then some dry brushing with a white, because that really pops out the edges.
Yes.
For the definition. And I'm going to talk to you about getting a cape for this too, because I saw the one you made recently, and I was like, it looks perfect for a Bermejo Batman.
Yeah, there was actually another custom order on that cape. They saw the red and black one, and they said, "Well, I need one for mine, but I want it in black."
Right. Yeah.
Okay, sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Very, very cool.
And along the way, I've been finding out other techniques that work as far as a primering technique.
Hmm.
So instead of painting everything in a gray or black, I've been using the Liquitex because the Liquitex dries very thin and it provides a tooth when you spray it so that it takes paint incredibly well. And so that minimizes the amount of paint thickness, especially on the joint areas, so you don't have the paint rub. And on that Page Puncher's Batman, if there's so much space in the elbows and knees, you don't have to sand it down. So it was such a time saver that
Yeah.
I didn't have to take it apart that far to sand and grind it down to make room for paint. And it was awesome. So especially if it was a black, it was really easy, or even
Yeah.
gray. So it takes paint really, really well. And when I was actually adding primer, not only was I changing the color of the figure, but I was just adding another layer of thickness.
Yeah.
And then it was just another issue to deal with.
Yeah.
It's just more materials to buy. And one primer is more expensive than the other. And honestly, they're not doing anything different. They can still paint rub, and then you got to start over and make touch-ups.
How did you get into, action figures and stuff? I mean, did you start with like reading comics, or are you fans of the movies, or,
Well,
where does it start with you?
I think with like many people, back when that animated series Batman was on the air, that was one of the things to follow, and it was just so captivating. And then when they came out with the figures, and the figures looked like the cartoon, it was cool. That back then,
Right.
that was it. So I started buying figures then, and I still have those actually.
Hmm.
And I just sporadically just kept buying the ones I really liked. Over the years, I've accumulated obviously some others, and I've sold out the collection many times and just started fresh. But every time being more selective
Yeah.
on what I purchased. I got into Hot Toys. I sold most of my Hot Toys because they deteriorate. You can't play with them. You just look at them. They're incredibly expensive. I do have a few left, but at the same time, I don't touch them because I know they're gonna fall apart. I have a
Right.
Catwoman that I had to rebuild because literally she came apart in your hands. The plastic was so
Wow.
brittle. So I ended up having to buy a Fison body. And that's kind of
Oh.
where I also ended up getting into customizing because I had to I wanted to use the original two heads. I had to fit it onto that ball peg. I wanted to use the original boots. So I had to cut the boots open. I had to take the Fison feet, put them inside the boot, and then I had to seal it so you can't tell where I cut it. So that was an entire project in itself. And there's two pairs of boots. And it worked. I'm really happy with it. I don't want to sell it now, but that's another reason why I quit buying the Hot Toys, because I shouldn't have to fix a $200 figure.
Mhm.
Right.
But it just happens. I got an Iron Man here that I'm going to get rid of because I'm tired of fixing it. It has lights, but it's got so many tiny batteries. I don't know why they didn't have a USB on it. It's got so many batteries. It's ridiculous. I have the Iron Monger. It takes 20 batteries. You got to use tweezers to put them in because
Right.
in those tiny little spaces. Yeah, and that's another reason. They're not fun to play with.
Right.
Maybe fun for somebody else, but I'm not for me anymore. So I sold most of those and I bought other stuff.
Gotcha.
Do you have any Mezco? Or do you work on any Mezco figures?
I do. I actually have a few of the Mezco pieces, and the two recent turtles, and one of them being the Frankenstein one. That actually I put a light in the dial, and then I just bought the Hunchback one. So I'm going to put a light inside the turtle shell,
Oh,
and
cool.
then I'm going to put the beard and the red eyebrows on it, because I want it to look like the artwork.
Yeah. What did I get today? I got I found a NECA RoboCop.
I'm sorry, you said Mezco.
I said
I
Mesco.
went
You
with
said
Mezco,
Mezco.
sorry. But yeah, I do have a few Mezcos, and I just got my Wolverine in,
Okay.
and I have that piece right here, the base.
Yes.
Yeah. So
You're going to light that up?
I want to have the hand light up. I love this. This thing lights up, which is great. But I want the hand to light up because it's supposed to be a beam that would come from his hand.
Yeah.
But other than that, no, it's a great piece. Those Mezco pieces are amazing. They're expensive, but in the end, if you made all those little accessories, you'd still be at $150.
Yeah, that's true.
I think your capes obviously would work so well with the Mezcos.
Yeah,
They've started getting
definitely.
into the wired capes. But
When I started, I actually bought Mezco's capes off of eBay. And
really,
to be honest with you, I bought it to take it apart
That's
right.
what I figured.
because I wanted to see how they did it and where the stitching was, where the cut was, what the material was. I can never find the material. That's probably proprietary to them. But the stitching is what the important part was, and where that wire was, and that's where I figured, okay, 4 wires is the key for this small cape. And then how did they anchor it was the other question because nobody wanted to share.
Right.
You keep saying that, and it reminds me of this. I know a few people that do Spider-Man webs, and you'd see people ask like, "Oh, what sort of wire do you use? What gauge or whatever?" And the guys will never share, and it's just like, dude, just
They
share the
want you to buy it
information.
from them.
Yeah, I know
I
it
know, yeah,
amazes
I
me
get
because
it.
they think you're going to take away part of the $3 million business.
Yeah,
Really?
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah.
Any other favorite projects that you're working on?
Well, I'm working on a Bane right now, and I actually have my own copy, but I want to light the tube that is coming from the tank. So I've now ordered these LED filament strips
Okay.
because they're 3 volt.
This one?
Yeah. So I
Okay.
ordered a filament strip off of Amazon to light those tubes,
Nice.
and they're not as complicated as I thought they were. Before I used an L wire, but the L wire makes a sound like a buzzing sound, and it's really irritating. And it works off of a giant battery pack, and it's obviously not gonna look good. So I actually did away with that, and I went to the smaller configuration from Evan Designs, and I'll be using the LED filament to do that. So I actually had to learn how to solder too. I didn't know how to do that, so I got to learn one more thing. So
So
I
you're
bought a
actually gonna cut off the tubes and replace them with these LED filament tubes.
yeah. So the original version of it only has 1 tube. Here they put in 3. But the head from the other unit, the Last Night on Earth, that one has 2 ports,
Mm-hmm.
and this one has 2 ports as well too. So I'll either have to switch out the tank, etc. But anyway, it's a 3 volt battery that would be running that 1 tube. Unfortunately, you can't cut it. It's got to be one continuous strand.
Mm.
So that's why I have to figure out how to use that one strand either just to those tubes or directly to the gauntlet that he's got on the arm. But
Yeah.
it's got to have the 2 wires hooked up to it to light up, and they look really cool. I mean, there's some incredible projects that some people have done with those that have forced me to actually decide to do that and implement it. But I haven't done it yet. I've just ordered those pieces to come in. That's one of the things I have pending.
Are you gonna replace the hands? I know some people are making
Yeah,
fists.
actually, there's another artist in Instagram, and he printed some fists. So I
Yeah.
ordered those, and then the extended neck peg to have the articulation.
Yeah. Yeah. I saw that.
Yeah, and then I ordered a custom printed head that has the battle damage, so you can see part of his face. And I've
Oh
already
wow.
painted it, so I've got to see how that's gonna fit on this body,
'Cause
and
his neck
if I
is
can use those same poses.
super small. I mean, there is no
Yeah,
neck basically.
yeah. So the articulation is limited, but that neck peg does give it more mobility. So once that's here, it's supposed to be here Wednesday.
Okay. Cool.
Wow, I'm really looking forward to see what you do with that because that that sounds really cool. I really want to see that lit
Yeah,
up
so
filament.
I painted the skin tones on that with the veins and such, and because he wanted them to show, but I didn't want it to look cartoony, so I had to make it look believable, like this veins are coming through under the skin, the color, and it was all dry brush. There's no airbrushing there, but the lighting is the other. I'll probably do it on the second figure, just in case I blow it.
Wow. And what brand of paint do you use? I mean, I know
I've
some people
actually
use Citadel.
I've switched several times for the same reason that I painted a vinyl cape and it started to peel
Hmm.
or
Mm.
and chip, and so I went to another channel in YouTube, and this guy does nothing but test paint. That's all he does, and he shared a Vallejo premium paint, which is a
Okay.
multi-surface paint. And you can paint vinyl, wood, leather, plastic, and it stays on.
Really?
And I go, oh, that's what I want because I don't want to have 4 different brands.
Yeah.
I want one brand that mixes nice and I can use it in my airbrush. And so I bought the kit from Amazon. They had it for $40. I only have 5 bottles. And it's the primary colors. Well, those 5 bottles, I make all the colors I need. So I had to obviously learn the characteristics of that paint because the same recipe in one brand doesn't work in the other brand.
Yeah.
So I used the Vallejo Premium. I was using the tester's paint because that's
Mhm.
kind of where I started making models. And those don't last very long. They turn ooey gooey after a few months. You got to toss them out. Then I went to the Vallejo ones. But they weren't the premium, so they were
Mhm.
flaking off certain plastics.
Mhm.
And then I didn't try the Citadels because they're expensive, and then they're just not around here, and I have to mail order everything. And I wanted something I could go next door and get if I needed it, like
Yeah.
go to Michael's. So I did go to Michael's, and I got golden, and those were great, but they're expensive. And again, they're not a multi-purpose paint. They're great for paper, leather, other things like that. But certain plastics, it just wouldn't take it.
Hmm.
And so then I went over to the Vallejo Premium, and I played with those. It was awesome. It was just they were on there and they weren't coming off. Obviously, if you're going to run hot water on it, you're going to ruin your work. But
Yeah.
if you spray it down and you handle the figure, the paint doesn't rub off on your hands. I sprayed a vinyl cape with it. It still hasn't flaked. It still looks really, really good.
Hmm.
But I'm not into vinyl capes, so I make the leather ones, the pleather or etc. So yeah, so it's paint was also a learning experience, and then from there went to the sealants. So I saw somebody using the Mr. Hobby, and a little tiny bottle of spray. It comes from Japan or somewhere in Asia. Incredibly expensive. It's $14. It
Mm.
smells really bad. It does a great job. But the Liquitex is 3 times the size. It's water based. It doesn't smell, and it's incredibly inexpensive.
Yeah. Okay. That's my next question because when I do my amateur job of painting these things, what do you use to seal it?
I'm using
Liquitex?
the Liquitex now. Now, it
Is
also
it?
depends what surface you're going to seal. If you sealing armor, you want a shinier look, so you want to use the shiny, the glossy Liquitex. I'm using the matte surface
Right.
because I use that as also as a primer to do the dry brushing. And then many times when I do the high gloss stuff, I actually will see it with a Tamiya X22, which is a really high gloss acrylic paint, but it's solvent based. It's not water based, but it goes well with the plastics.
Mhm.
But you gotta let it air dry, or if you got a what do you call it, an air dryer. Unfortunately, if you brush it on, the viscosity is so thick you can only do a few brush strokes before it gets really thick and starts to set.
Hmm.
So I spray it on and it works great, but it doesn't have the same gloss that you would have when you brush it on. So I spray it on first, and then I go back and I put in a thick coat of it without ruining the details, and then I just let that air dry for 2-3 hours, and then it's you can actually touch it, and it doesn't come off, and it's incredibly high gloss. It looks like you used resin. That's how glossy it is.
Huh. Wow.
But it's only in certain materials. I use that on like on the lips or the eyes to make it look like it's wet.
Mhm.
Or like on the Bane figure that you just pulled up, I made it look like he's dripping venom out of the
Out of the
tubes.
tank. Okay.
Uh-huh. And I just let it drip in little drops, and because it coagulates so quickly, it looks like it's leaking the venom.
Cool.
Wow.
Yeah. So each project is different. And even when I get a request to do the same one, there's always a change. Can you add this to it? Can you make it look like this?
Right.
And then it just changes the whole scheme. Yeah.
Wow.
Mm.
You're a busy man with all these custom requests coming in now.
Well, I for every one you see, I at least have 3 or 4 in progress. I have 4 projects going at the same time
Wow.
because I got to wait for one paint to dry. Then I got to wait for some materials to show up, and then I lose interest in this one, and I can go to this one.
So, has your custom work, you started out doing it for yourself. Has it now turned into more of, now you're getting custom requests for like, commissions more so?
I am getting a few custom requests for commissions, yes, and yeah, it started out for myself, and then a few others I'd seen the work, and they said, "Well, can you get the same thing replicated?" Yeah, sure. But of course, I had to let them know, well, if you've got the figure, send it in, because if
Right.
I buy it, and then it doubles the price, and I got to go find it, and I got to resell it to you. So if you have all those parts, send them in, and I'll work on it for you. And then I just charge them for the labor, which is really not that much when you compare it to all the pieces you've already acquired. So unfortunately, it's still expensive, because if you have a figure that requires 6 different parts from 6 different figures,
Hmm.
yeah, especially if you're going to buy the parts separately on eBay, they're going to charge you $20 for a pair of hands, and $20 for a pair of feet,
Yeah.
and another 25 for the head, and you still got to paint it. So it can add up really, really fast. So when you get a figure like the what is it, the Nightwing figure, which is a base body, and it works great for a lot of other characters, all you do is switch out the head and repaint it. Maybe switch the hands out, because it's such a incredibly easy base body, which is why the 2-pack, the Booster Gold and Beetle
Hmm.
base bodies, it's a great pack to do any other character, because it's clean. There's no lines there. All you gotta do is paint it, switch out the head, boom, there's your new figure.
There you go.
And I see McFarlane reusing those many times over.
Yeah, you're right. That's what's so great. I mean, I think about this Page Puncher Batman. I mean, he'll never be able to use that body. Let's see if you could see it.
Yeah,
I mean, it's just this is a Lee Bermejo body.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, I've seen
such
quite a few people just switch out the head, and it makes a big difference.
Yeah.
big difference. That's what I'm planning on doing. Once I get my ink drop customs cape for it. Well, that's coming up on about an hour, so we won't take up too much of your time.
All right,
Once
no worries.
again, you know, we can find you on the social media at Ink Drop Customs. Please go out and follow him and check out his work. It is amazing. You're going to find something that you're going to love, and you may never have thought was possible with some of these action figures. Just the way that the capes, just add so much dynamic to the characters. Also, please subscribe and view his YouTube channel, Ink Drop Customs. Again, another great resource for if you're ever thinking of doing this yourself, or just want to, learn something new, or see how he's doing his work. Please follow and watch these videos because they're very short, they're very educational. I love the fact that you do it in English and uh, Spanish.
We're doing it
And
in Spanish because I got requests for it, and
Mhm.
but I've been splitting it up separately now. So instead of combining the two in one video, I have one in English, one in Spanish.
yeah, I mean, it's just broadening your audience, and I think that's a great thing. But thank you so much for joining us. I had a blast. Please follow Ink Drop Customs, and that's it for Grumps and
Well,
Gramps.
I just before we get off, I just wanted to say, well, thank you for coming on, first of
Hmm.
all, and second of all, I think it's really awesome that you look to share your knowledge and not just keep it to yourself. That's really generous of you. So I appreciate that. I'm not a customizer, but I appreciate the fact that you like to share, and I think that's great.
It's an art form, man. It
Yeah.
really is.
My pleasure to share with you. Thank you for having me on.
All right. Well, that's it for Grumps and Gramps. Till next time, please rate, review, give us a comment, and we will talk to you guys later. Have a good night.